Welcome to the Work-Life Balance Podcast. I am Kara.
And I am Maggie.
Together, we're a power real estate team with the Bajetti Partners in Nashville.
We believe that the hustle culture of today's driven entrepreneur who lives and works in Middle Tennessee
requires balance.
Welcome back to Work-Life Balance. Today, we're going to be talking about Kara's Guide to Investing.
Woohoo! All right, let's do this.
Let's do it. So just tell us a little bit about how you got started.
Okay, so was a real estate agent right off the bat, out of college, right? So that was probably in year 2003, and did that for 5-6 years of just being an agent, right? Mm-hmm. Well, in 2008, we had a crazy change in the market, and I just saw opportunity as not only to be a real estate agent, but now I'm at the forefront of it.
Yeah.
Why aren't we picking up investment properties that have now totally dropped in value, right? Mm-hmm. So there was just a little niche area in the time that I had just happened to have my license that I just decided that that's the route I need to kind of venture in.
Yeah.
So my husband and I'm at 30 years old at this time. We decided, here was our plan. We're going to have 10 rentals by the time we're 40. Okay. So we're going to pick up a rental each year, and we should be kind of in a financial freedom stage by 40 and mailbox cash, right? The whole thing. So that was our plan. Things changed drastically and quickly. Mm-hmm. So do you want me to kind of go into how that first property went, or how would you like me to?
Okay, so yes, just a little bit, not too much, because we have a lot to cover.
We have a lot to cover.
So, but yes, go into that, because I know it's hard for a lot of people to get into it because they don't have a lot of money at the very beginning. So if you can just talk about how you got your very first one to get you started. Okay,
so we didn't have a lot of money. I am an avid believer, and I know you're reading it right now, of the Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So my husband and I already read it. That was our mind frame. Okay, this is how we want to live our life. Okay. We don't want to be married to a job, whatever. So one of the main things he teaches you in there is OPM, right? Remember what that says? I'm going to quiz you right now.
No, I don't
Other
remember.
people's money.
Yeah.
Okay, so because we didn't have the money to just go out and buy a rental property, we're starting a family, everything's going along.
Did you have Mason at that time?
I did.
Okay.
Did we have all three? Yeah, if I was 30, I had all three. I was having Hudson that year. So I went to my dad and I said, hey, we just want to capitalize on this market. The market's in the tank. How can we do this? Can we take a loan?
Yeah.
And so my dad said, why don't you get out on the ground, start looking at properties, come to me and present your offer, and I'll see what I can do. So it's kind of if you know my dad, everything's a business transaction when it comes to it. And it's a learning lesson along with it. But he's my biggest cheerleader and will help if he can, right? Yeah. So, but my job was to get my ducks in a row. So that's what I did. I went to the ghetto. I went straight to the ghetto where I knew I can get shit for $30,000.
Stockton.
The ghetto of Modesto. Yeah. So I was like, okay, we're going to go. I knew this neighborhood because unfortunately my grandmother was dirt floor poor, and we spent a lot of time in it. So I knew it, but it's very sketchy. And so I just started going, and John and I would go look at these properties. And my dad was like, what are you looking at? Some where the floors were caving in. It was just crap. And he was like, why don't you step it up a little bit? Just a little bit, get off the $15,000 homes. Cause that's all, honestly, if we weren't going to take a loan, that's how much we had.
Yeah.
What's that going to get you? A crap house that's falling down. So we found this little home, and I went to my dad. I said, okay, here's the deal. We can pay $30,000. I think I can get $800 a month for rent. It needs a little bit of work. What do you think? He goes, well, I'll charge you 8% interest. I'll give you the money. You put your sweat equity into it. I know. Do you know what that means?
Yeah.
So John and I go over there.
Funny, 8%.
8% interest to his daughter, Rod Lowe.
Yeah.
Shout out. So 8% interest, took the loan, bought the house. Our job was to get in there and fix it up. So John and I were over there in the evenings after work, cleaning it up, remodeling it, got it darling, got renters in it. They were paying me $800 a month. I think my mortgage payment to him was $250 or so.
Okay.
So instant cash flow.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay. That's a cool feeling.
Yeah.
I'm not doing much and I'm making money. So there was a little back unit to it. So then we moved onto that and made that little makeshift studio into a cute little 1-bedroom apartment. Rented that out for $600.
Okay.
So now I've got a pretty good amount of money coming off a $30,000 investment.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So that gave us the taste. From there, it just rolled.
How much was the property? You guys put $30,000 into it,
It was total $30,000.
Oh, okay.
Purchase price was $30,000.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, unheard
that
of.
that just shows you how much of like a different time we're living in now. Because I'm like, what is that?
Okay,
what did you get for $30,000?
I know, and funny
Maybe
story
like
to that.
half an acre.
Correct, like nothing.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I looked at the tax roll on that house, it had it previously sold for $230,000, like before, like years and years before. And I remember looking at John and my dad going, there's no freaking way anybody's paying $230,000 for this piece. Guess what? I just sold that house for
Oh yeah, because you sold it what, 2 years ago.
$230,000.
You sold 2 years ago when you moved out here. That's
Last
when you
summer.
got rid of all of it. Okay,
Sold it
That's
for that
insane.
same price that I was like, there's no way.
Yeah.
So beautiful story is we had equity built in that property. We had cash flow also. So it's like the perfect storm.
And you made over 200 with 30. That's insane.
Yeah.
And I
And
guess
if you
that's
count the
just,
monthly income,
That's just
so-
knowing when to get in it too. You saw an opportunity and went after it.
Right.
Okay, so your dad was basically the bank for you
For my
at
first
that
house.
point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So I have like a bunch of questions I want to
Okay.
be able to ask you. Can anybody do it in your opinion?
Absolutely.
Okay. So it's just a matter of finding a good lender.
I think a lot of it is asking for help. And you're going to find, I think most people, if they've got a little bit of cash and they might pay 8%, you might pay 10%. You might even pay more than that. But there's a lot of hard money loans. If you can't go to the bank and get a loan, because I do know that's difficult, especially starting out and getting an investment property. But there's a lot of people out there that would pay for you if you'll give them that nice return back. So I would not ever discount it. Just get your feet in it.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Just literally
Start
try.
talking and networking. Yep.
That's what I had a feeling you were going to say is just do it.
Got to do it.
Yeah. Okay. Pros and cons of owning rentals as an investment versus other investments like stocks and having a portfolio of that nature.
For me, real estate is everything. We've played with the stock market. I like the day in and day out of real estate.
The tangibleness
I like the tangibleness of it. I like that I can go check it out and be like, oh, that's my property. I can create value to it. If the market goes down, I can do things. I have control over it.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way. You have control. It's an asset that you can physically touch, be at, and improve and sell when you want.
Yeah. Okay. Cons.
Landlord.
Yeah. Having to deal with the bullshit that comes along with that.
Yeah. So we went from 0 homes to 30 homes in 5 years, and I managed all of it. And the headache that comes along with appeasing so many people's different personalities is a beast.
Yeah.
And thank God for the psychology background.
I was going to say, your psychology degree comes in handy.
Completely. I mean, it really, truly did. And I created a nice relationship with my tenants. But then you have the flip side of it where you're evicting and you're dealing with the, displacing someone. Like there would be families that would live there with young children, but she wasn't paying her rent. And I'm sorry, I'm not bankrolling it for you. Like this is not free housing.
Yeah. I feel like
And
you
that
have to
was
draw,
hard.
like we talked about setting boundaries, and that's one thing as a landlord. You have to kind of draw the line of being their friend, because then they'll take advantage of you.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you can ask my husband, I got taken advantage of a lot.
Yeah.
Because
you have a kind heart.
have a kind heart. I mean, I would, for Thanksgiving, I'd drop off turkeys and pumpkin pies at every single house. Like I just feel for them. I'm like, hey, they need a little extra help, because we did capitalize on the lower income locations, because that's what we could afford when we were 30, is to get into that market. Now, if I was to buy a rental, I'd probably be in a little bit different of a demographic, but at that time, that's it. And so it was like, I got to know my tenants on a very comfortable level.
Yeah.
I was young and eager, and they needed a house.
For sure.
And the match just worked. And
Yeah. And when you're young, I feel like it doesn't matter as much about like location and having it be imperfect. You just have to, like you said, just get into it.
I needed to get into it. And when I saw the money that you could make off whatever the location might be, because at the end of the day, it's
about cash flow.
the cash flow. And what's your ROI? Your return on investment? What is that? If I'm going to put in $30,000, what am I expecting back?
Right.
And if you ask me that question now compared to what I was getting with those numbers, I can never match that again.
Okay. So I'm glad you brought that up. That was going to be my next question is I asked Mark this question too, whenever we had him on, but what is the return that you look for when you're prospecting for rentals? Maybe not now, because I know that would be a little bit different, but when you got started, what was that? Like percentage wise, maybe. It's
hard to say because back then it was like, okay, if I have a mortgage payment at a couple hundred, if I make a couple hundred, that's good enough.
Right.
You know? So now your properties aren't going for 30,000. So you might get a 200,000 or $300,000 home. Your mortgage payment might be 1,500 and you might be able to make 2,000.
Right.
So maybe there's a 500, you know, you still got property taxes and insurance to factor in. It's not, I don't have like a black and white answer for that. If it cash flows, I'm interested.
Right.
If I'm going in the hole and there's a red, I'm not. So, and it just varies.
Right.
It really is hard to say an exact number.
So that's going back then. So what about now when you're looking for rentals and things like that now, what % do you look for?
I still can't tell you. Yeah. It's really just cash flow. Like I don't say if it can make me $1,000, then I will look at it.
Right.
If I see appreciation side, like let's say the house we looked at yesterday, that's the shittiest house on the best street. There is appreciation to be made and there's rent to be made.
Yeah.
That's my bread and butter. Like I'm all in on that kind of a property. I just, with the market the way it is, I don't want to buy at the top of the market and not be able to rent it for my mortgage payment.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's where it changes.
Okay. That's another question I want to ask too is how did you find renters for your properties? Did you do that yourself? You just marketed? Like what
marketed.
Was the way? Okay.
Honestly, a for rent sign in front of the house is how I really did it. And I never had a problem getting a tenant in. And then that's the other thing that kind of goes with it. If you're good to your tenants, you don't have a lot of turnover. And that's super important in the game of being a landlord because the second somebody moves out, you're remodeling. And there goes a lot of your cash flow because you have to redo all the carpets and you got to do the paint and they typically would smoke inside.
Yeah.
So you've got to, you know what I mean? There's a lot to it. So I would rather, and this is just the way I worked, I would rather you tell me, hey, I can't pay rent this month because I can't put food on the table than say, I'm not going to pay ever and whatever. Let me work with you because I'd rather you stay.
Yeah.
Then that 1 month me go, sorry, you're out.
Yeah.
And I got to dump in 10 grand. That goes against my bottom line.
For sure. So. And I think we were talking about this last time too, when we had a discussion about this, is how hard it is to get somebody out once they're in.
I had Jim, my eviction guy, on speed dial.
Yeah.
Like legit. California rules are super different. I'm not super familiar with the Tennessee evictions, but COVID, you could not evict.
Yeah.
So I had a handful of people that decided that they weren't going to pay and they didn't have to. And there was no restrictions from the government. So they lived for free, but guess what? I was still responsible for that mortgage payment.
Exactly.
That wasn't an option. So that was a messed up time.
And right now I think a lot of people are complaining about how their rents are going up. But I mean, if you're under a private landlord, they can't help it either.
Right.
Unless they have had that property for years and years and years.
Right.
And they have like a $600 house payment or something crazy or just own it.
Right.
Yeah. It's insane.
I know. Well, and I think that's the next wave that you're going to see is the rents are going to get extremely out of control because people are getting pushed out of the market. They can't afford their loans anymore.
Yep.
They don't qualify for their loans. We're seeing it firsthand. They can't qualify. So now they're getting in the rental market and the renter or the landlords are
jacking up rent.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of people from just like college that even there, they've raised their rent $500. Who can afford that?
Not in college.
You can't afford that. Your rent went from being $1,100, which is like insanely high anyways,
crazy, to
$1,600. That's just not even feasible.
So then what do you do? What's your chance? You got to get all these roommates. You have people sleeping on the couch.
Yeah.
It becomes crazy. A crash pad.
Okay. So how long did it take you and John to accumulate all the properties that you had?
So like I mentioned, our goal was 0 to 10 in 10 years, right? Things changed a little bit. So we got excited about the first. Then the next door neighbor came and they wanted me to buy it. So then I went to the bank and I got a loan for that one. So it just catapulted. And then we refinanced that one and bought into the next one. And that's how we kind of played the game.
So it went quicker than you thought it was
went
going to.
very quick. It was 0 to 30 in maybe 3 to 5 years. I don't even think it was 5 years.
Oh, goodness.
It was fast. So we went from single family, then we picked up some multis.
Okay.
The other creative way we went, because again, we're still young trying to do all this, and it was just moving and grooving.
Yeah.
We found owner financing was an option back then. So I had an owner that had 3 properties, and I bought all 3 with his financing from him. So that was cool. That like jumped us up. Then my dad kind of
did a lot.
We did a ton. So my dad kind of got excited and was like, well, I kind of want to get in on this. It's like, well, let's go. Let's bring your money in.
Yeah.
I'll run the show to help bankroll it. So we picked up, a 5-plex, a 4-plex, 2 duplexes with him. And that just, I mean, it just was rolling very quick.
So whenever you say you were managing 30 rental properties, you were managing much more than 30 rental properties. You were managing.
I was managing
multi-units.
I was managing, let's call it 30 doors.
Yeah.
So 30 families.
That's insane.
It was a lot. It got to be overwhelming where, at that time I was going and personally picking up rent from each property on the first of the month. So it was like a taxi driver.
Yeah.
Then I kind of got smarter. I was like, okay, no, you need to sit it in the mail or you need to bring it to my office. Like, so I was learning as I was growing, and it was fantastic. And I was balls to the wall. Like, we're going to do this. I mean, you've got cash flow coming in, like, wow.
Yeah.
I'm doing it. Like, I don't.
Exactly.
So I put real estate to the side. That was my primary. I used my real estate for my acquisitions.
Right.
And that was wonderful.
And that's what I was going to ask you too, because our whole thing is work-life balance.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this before. I know we have, but that's what really took your life from being a realtor day to day, going, showing properties, doing that kind of thing, to having time to do the things that you were wanting to do because you just owned a bunch.
Correct.
Okay.
Call it mailbox money.
Right. So what did that change look like for you?
It went from me running around showing properties and not having all the time in the world for my kids and my family, and I had little ones, to going to the office and cashing checks and maintaining. Trust me, every day was a fire though. You're putting out so it was a lot of that work, but it gave me the opportunity not to have to chase.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
You're new in it, so you know what that looks like. I mean, you're spending a lot of time on the road.
For sure.
And with little kids, it's hard. So it freed me up. And the whole idea was financial freedom. I don't want to wait for a paycheck in the mail. Like, I wanted to make that my money work for me. And that's what we got.
You want to stay in bed one day, you can have the freedom to just stay in bed.
That's what it was. Yeah.
Exactly. That's kind of what it looks like for me too.
Yeah.
Later on, it's just
that's your
do what
goals.
you want. Yeah.
That's it.
Whatever you want. Okay.
I get it, girl.
On to the next. How long did it take for you to see an actual profit? Because I'm sure at the beginning were you using the cash flow to put into other properties, right?
A little bit. Yeah. So it just was like basically buying, renovating it, renting it, refinancing it. And so when you would go to refinance, let's say I paid $30,000, the bank looks at it. Well, it looks more like an $80,000 property. So I was taking that money to bankroll the next one. So my mortgage payments might increase a little bit, but I was grabbing another asset in the meantime. Okay. So cash flow was pretty instant. I never overextended where I wasn't seeing positive.
Well, you're very conservative anyways.
Yeah. And I knew we were creating something bigger than just the couple $100 asset.
Right.
Or income. We were creating not a legacy, but like a.
You did though.
We did. And then we created a company for my kids. So we bought a house for each of them. And so I wanted to have them to have their own college fund. Right. Basically, instead of a 401, we bought them a property.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to college time, that was the goal, like sell the property.
Yeah.
And then.
Which that's becoming a lot more popular now. I mean, you see all over the internet now, like, okay, buy your kids a house when they're born.
Yeah.
And just rent it out and that'll pay for their college. It makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
All right. So you obviously dealt with a whole lot of people.
Yeah.
So what are some of the craziest things that you saw happen in some of your rentals?
Do we have hours for this?
Just a few. Just give us a few. Just for fun.
Yeah. So like I mentioned, having 30 different families comes with a lot of drama.
Oh yeah.
A lot. And so I actually created like a blog a while back because it was like fun to just relive it. It was really crazy in the moment, but like thinking back, like, holy shit, there was a lot that went down. So like it happened to be the one that we bought with my dad, and it was a 4 units. And literally probably owned it for, I don't know, let's say a week. Okay. Didn't even really remember the address. Like I knew the street, but I still was learning what the address was. Right. You know, it wasn't like, so I'm like an avid newspaper girl. Like I'm not since I moved here, but yes. So I'm reading the newspaper one morning, having my coffee, and I'm reading like this thing that went down this weekend. And I'm like, holy crap, what happened? And then I'm like, that's the street I have a property on. But then I wasn't flashing on the address because like I said, didn't really have that address completely memorized, but it was a quinceañera. How do you say that word?
Quinceañera.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I better drive over there just to see if it was my property. Sure as shit. I pull in. So the way this property laid out, there was a front house and three units in the back. So I pull past the front house and there's this big carport area, right? I see the decorations. My freaking heart at the floor because I'm like, holy cow, like this was my property. Of course, the police don't let me know that there was stuff that happened in my house this weekend. So I'm there to figure it out. So I'm like, okay, well, as I'm pulling in and I see the decorations, one of the back house tenants meets me in the driveway. And I'm like, how are you? Like literally have never met them once because we've only owned it for like a week or maybe 2. And she's like, well, do you know what happened? And I'm like, I kind of read the article. Was that here? And she's like, yes. Okay. No shit.
You probably freaked out.
She is spraying down blood all over my carport.
Okay, what happened?
Okay.
What happened? It was years ago. What happened?
It was insane. So they were having a party, the quinceañera. A gang family was at the party. Oh, well, the rival showed up in the middle of this little child's party, opened fire on the party. Well, one of the people at the party had a gun and shot back and killed the dude in my carport. So legit.
Hey, your property.
Oh my. So legit, there's a blood stain that I'm parked on, not knowing that it's a blood stain. So she's coming out and she starts washing down. And I'm like, what the shit? So she goes on to tell me that the gang guy that came in opened fire on the party. I mean, they're talking little kids running. They're hiding. Like, it's just heartbreaking. The gang that they shot, they throw him in the truck, take him and dump his body at the park down the street. So they've now got a dead body at the park in the neighborhood. I mean, it was just
a mess.
This is like one of 5,000 stories. This one just happened to be so dark that it was like, what did I get myself
into? How many people died?
Into just that guy.
Okay.
Thank God none of the babies because there were a lot of children.
That's really bad.
It was terrible. So I'm like, oh my God, do I like evict the family? No, because it was a family friend that was there for the part.
Yeah. What do you do? What did you do?
Nothing. I couldn't do anything. Yeah. I just was like, they had already filed the police report that it happened at the house. Clearly it was in the newspaper.
Oh my gosh.
But I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that was probably.
It was so scary. So my poor dad, who's like first taste of like slumming it landlord here. He's like, what have you gotten me into? Oh my gosh. I'm like, what have I gotten myself into?
Because you don't ever know.
You don't think that somebody's going to be murdered on your property.
No. Not a week after you buy it.
I know.
Maybe like, years after you buy it.
Should I put a for sale sign like no disclosure, a murder happened here last week? Yeah. Anybody that knows would have read the article and been like, yo, that's the property.
That's insane. Shit show. Insane. Okay, one more.
So,
gotta drink some water. Kara, after telling us people got murdered.
I know. I apologize. That was a disaster. There's a multi-stories from that house. That whole complex was my worst purchase.
Okay.
I bought, and that was a West Side Modesto, which is more gangs and more crime. That was my worst purchase. And we'll go back to stories on that one down the road.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, we could talk about this forever. Another crazy one was Dad. It was one he also went in on with me. And that was
your dad does not have good luck. He did the bad juju.
He brought the juju. So this one, bought it, remodeled it, made it super darling. I liked this one because my grandma had lived next door when she was alive, and I just knew this street. Again, wrong side of town, though. Wrong side of town. So like I said, I had Jim, my eviction guy on speed dial, right? So I had already evicted out of this property, got this new people in. I think they're going to be great. Like, I feel like they're great. Yeah, no. So I couldn't figure out why. One, her electrical bill was crazy high. And I kept getting phone calls from the neighbors. So she stopped paying her electrical bill. Well, they cut the power off. So then I find out that she's pulling electrical from across the street. So she's literally tapped into a vacant home across the street, running a power line across the street to light up her house. So the neighbors are all up in arms. Like, she's pulling, I know, very creative. She's pulling power from a vacant house.
Oh my God.
Okay, well, turn the power off of the vacant house. Like, I just didn't understand it. Why is she pulling so much power? The house is lit up like all night long. Well, long story short, she had a
meth.
prostitution. She had a prostitution ring going on in the house. So I don't go into these houses after dark. Like, I don't even live in the neighborhood. So I don't just do a random drive-by at midnight to see what's going on. So I got the neighbor to start kind of creeping on it for me, and she would call and report, okay, traffic is really heavy between these hours. So I called the police. Hey, can you go check on it? No, I need to actually see physical proof. Somebody has to be smoking meth on the front porch, like legit catching them in the action. I'm like, well, that's impossible. Like, I can't tell you right now somebody's going in and hooking and prostituting, whatever. And smoking meth, whatever they're doing.
I just want to know what you have to have that much power for a prostitution ring for. Wouldn't you want it to be dark anyway? I'm very confused, but keep going.
It was wild. It was so wild. So I finally figure out, I got to evict them. They're not paying, and they're ruining the neighborhood's getting crazy. It's all bad. So I go over there with Jim, and I love a good eviction. They're good. They can be.
You're so funny.
Fun.
Like, I care about people so much, but also I love to kick you out of your house.
I love a good, because you never know what you're walking into.
Oh my God.
So Jim would be like, Kara, okay, you hide behind the car. Cause I'm like, let's go. Like, what's the story today? How are we doing?
Oh my God.
Like, would you get behind the car? Like, you just don't know. I'm like, okay, so this one, I'm hiding behind the car. He's put me in my place. The police show up to evict. They go to knock on the door. The door's off the hinges and falls right down on two people doing it, because the whole house is full of mattresses. And they were humping. That's
the most Southern I've heard you get since I've known you.
They were doing the dirty. Oh my God. At the door. So the poor cops.
No.
And these are not little cute people. These are crackhead, big, naked bodies.
Please tell me how they reacted. What did they do?
All I see is the cop, who I just adored because he came to all the evictions, looks back like, oh my God. Like, he had just saw a ghost. Like, covering, but like wanting to laugh, but every emotion. And Jim goes walking up and he's like, Kara, you've got to be kidding me. I'm like,
oh my God.
Tell me what you see. And he's like, they're doing it right there. Like, the door just hit them. Right there. Girl.
Meanwhile, there's like meth on the stove.
Oh, there was a shit ton of
power
people
being brought from a different house.
I know. So I'm sitting now, the cops go, you've got like 5 minutes, get your belongings, get out. So they're grabbing whatever they can, half dressed. Here comes a whole parade of them out of the house, walking the walk of shame down the street. I've never seen something like this in my life. And I'm sitting behind the car like, oh my God. Like, so bad you want to videotape it so I can share it like with my friends later. I can't make this shit up.
Oh my God.
It literally was.
I'm still confused on why the fuck that woman was pulling so much power.
Because she was probably cooking.
That's insane.
She was probably cooking. I'm sure there was a lot of cooking going on in there.
How long until you found out about that? Like, how long was she there until you
She was in that house
her?
for 3 years.
Oh my God.
But it didn't start out that I was aware of like that. It grew, and she started running the shit through that.
Well, I hope it was consensual. That's all I'll say. Or hopefully the cops got involved. I don't know.
Living the life. That's why the blog was Little Miss Landlord. I literally
Little Miss Landlord. That's cute.
It was cute. It was every single day. I had something crazy.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, cash flow is fabulous. Living the landlord life when you're running them. Most people don't run them. I'm just kind of a little bit on the control side of it. It was interesting.
Okay. So another question. How do you screen, or did you screen people that were wanting to rent your property? Like what kind of background checks did you do? Stuff like that.
So because this area was a lot of people that didn't have the best of credit, a lot of Section 8, which is subsidized, payments from the government. I didn't really do credit checks because they don't have credit. These people are just, they just need
a house.
Yeah. And again, Section 8 was a lot of it. So I knew that was guaranteed money. And I love that.
Yeah.
I wasn't having to wait on it. And Section 8 clearly does not vet their people very well. It's just something they apply for and they get. So I had a background service that would do some of the preliminary stuff for me. But to tell you the truth, a lot of it was my gut. So sometimes my gut was on and sometimes
just having a feeling about people when you meet them.
Yeah. And everybody's got a story and they pull at your heartstrings and they know what to say. And the shittiest thing is that they know how to work the system. And as good of a person as I am and how much I want them to live in a home and off the streets, sometimes it backfired on me. And sometimes it was the most beautiful ending. I have tenants that I gave a chance that literally were living under bus stops, benches, and they stayed with me for 10 years and were the most faithful, loving, still text me even though I don't even own the property just to check in. I have those relationships, and then I had the total trash using side also. Right. So it was hard to vet them. It truly was. It was more of a filling.
Right. And you just kind of take what you can get.
My picker was not always on.
Yeah.
I would say 85% of it was on.
Well, you can't be on 100%. That's just, especially when, people are as much as you don't want to admit it, people are very manipulative and know what to say, how to say it to get you to be like, okay.
100%. And when COVID came,
yeah,
damn well they knew that they could stay for rent, living for rent free. I didn't get one gal did not pay me for the whole 2 years. There was no repercussion. She could stay there. Oh the government didn't care. I still paid that payment every month. I couldn't evict her.
So whenever the government was giving back assistance for COVID, did you get any kind of relief from that?
Not for a landlord.
Oh my goodness. No. So you were still having to make your payments and everything 100%. And they just got to live in your properties rent free.
You could do deferment, but at the second you do deferment on your loan, ruins your credit immensely. And if I ever wanted to go get another property, it would be on my credit.
Right.
And
you did.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I would never not make a payment. That's number one lesson. Do not ever skip a payment. 30-day late, jack your credit up, and it makes you not a good lendable person. And we need to be able to take as much money as I want to get. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the process of dumping all of them, because you obviously couldn't do that from living in Tennessee. Correct.
So we actually sold all of them once to we actually sold them all to one person.
Okay.
So I had an investor come to me asking about one of the properties, and I said, that's great, but I'd like to sell my portfolio. And here it is. So I had offloaded a few of them previously before we moved here to buy an Airbnb in Nashville and do a 1031 exchange on that. So I'd already kind of unloaded a couple. I still had quite a bit, and he was wanting to buy all of them.
Yeah.
So we negotiated a price, and it just worked out because you're right. There was
That's way easier.
It was so much easier. I probably would have made more money individually selling them, but the headache of doing that was, it was like, you know what?
Yeah, having to put all of them on the market. Correct. And that would be way more.
And not being in town to watch it.
You got kind of lucky with that, huh?
I got hands down the luckiest on that. Yeah.
That's insane. You really don't hear that much unless it's like some multi-million-dollar investor, which that's insane that you kind of just picked one up. Yeah. Just cherry picked.
I know. It was amazing because he came to us wanting to pick up one to fix and flip. And I'm like, but I've got these other ones. And he was like, show me them all. I'm like, done. Where's the check?
So you just went around, basically put him in all of them.
I let him look at every single one of them, and he was like, I love them all. I want them all. I'm like, okay, here's my number.
Well, yeah, because you and John do good work. So if y'all did all the renos, like they were probably beautiful.
Full. Yeah. So if he wanted to keep them as instant cash flow, they were all wanting to stay.
Yeah.
Now, whatever he did with them afterwards, I don't know, but.
Yeah. I have a question about this, but you might not know, you may know. If you were wanting to do something like that, buy somebody's entire portfolio, is that something that you could get funding from for the bank?
Yeah, so he went through Lending Home, which is a almost like a hard money lender, but you can get, and I've used them for a couple of flips out here, just not wanting to use cash, and because it's like a cash transaction.
Yeah.
They don't really need a lot of stuff. It's not like a bank where you have to get like all your taxes and everything. So he used them, and they have bridge loans, they've got refinancing loans, they've got flip loans, they've got rental loans. So it is made for people like that. He individually put a loan on them all separately though from them, but it looked to me as one transaction.
Okay.
So I got the lump sum as one. He individually packaged them with them.
Okay.
And that was just that was up to him.
His deal.
Yeah.
Is that a Lending Home something that you would recommend for people that are wanting to get into it?
I do.
Yeah.
Because it's really, really difficult. You're going to pay a little bit more. I think they just quoted me 7%, which actually is not much more than the bank's quoting right now. But for an investment property, if you can get a 7% loan, and good. For somebody like you that wants to get in the market and not have to have all this previous experience, it's the perfect spot to go.
Yeah. And I mean, like you just said, banks, individual lenders, they're quoting you close to 7% right now anyways.
Yeah. Second home and investment properties, you're in the sevens.
No, that's insane.
So if you want to do it and just have them take it, and then you can put down 20% or whatever. I think there's origination fee on that, but otherwise it's made for that purpose.
So if you could lay out a step-by-step for me or anybody like me that's wanting to get started in it, what would that look like?
One, start figuring out some capital. So whether you're going to go to a person like Lending Home, which that's a perfect start, or talking to a family member or somebody that maybe can give you some cash, throw a higher interest rate on it. That's okay. Get in the market.
Yeah.
Get into the market. Right now with the market changing is a perfect time. And that's what my plan is, to get back into it now that we're here and I'm ready to start picking up again. It's a great time to get into it. So yeah, first, get your capital figured out. Second, just go in and do it. If the cash flow is there, whether it's $100, $200, or $1,000, you're already appreciating. That's perfect. It's just going to get better. And with the way that landlords can charge a lot for rent right now, it's a no-brainer. That's where the market should be.
Exactly.
If you're an investor, it's the perfect time to own rentals.
For sure.
So really that's step by step. Now, you don't have to property manage them yourself. You could pay a company to do it, and that takes probably a ton of headache away from you.
Right.
But I wanted to keep that money in my pocket, and I think you're paying 8 to 10% to a property management company. So that's quite a bit.
That's a lot, especially when you're already not, if it's one that's maybe not ideal, but you're just using it to get in. It's not something that you really want to take extra off the top.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you only have one or two, it's very manageable to do.
Exactly. Right.
It's very manageable. So
that's what my brother does. He only has one, and so he just does it himself.
Right. Now my Airbnb is totally different because I don't know all that property, hotel tax. There's a lot more to it.
That's a lot. Yeah.
So I have a property manager for that. And I do.
And there's cleaning after every single time. And that's a lot.
And who wants the bachelorette who fell out of the shower at midnight that needs cleanup?
Well, let's talk about that for a second. The difference between owning an Airbnb and owning an long-term rental. Because they're different. And you can't always just buy a house and put an Airbnb.
No.
So I think that's a lot of a misconception that people have is like, oh, I'll just make this an Airbnb. Well, you can't really do that.
Well, especially in Nashville, as we know, they've limited those because I think, in a lot of big cities, Austin, Palm Springs, like a lot of the high Airbnb markets have really hungered down on letting permits be given out as much because they're taken away from the hotels.
Yeah.
And so now we have to pay the hotel tax. And so you're giving them a little bit of money for them not using their room. So that kind of gets, So Nashville, if it's not already zoned for it, you can't really get one unless there's a little loophole right now where people are selling their LLCs. And that's the other way you can get an Airbnb that's already there. You cannot just go downtown, especially in Franklin. Franklin really is strict. You cannot go, oh, you know what? That looks like a perfect Airbnb.
Yeah.
You cannot do that.
No.
There's regulations. And some you can't even rent for less than 60 days.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking because, I know it's not different, but I just know that there's a lot of caveats with it, and
there's a lot.
It can be difficult, for sure.
So, I would say totally different beast.
Yeah.
Airbnb is fantastic if you're fine with that short-term, not always guaranteed it's going to be rented, but could make a lot of money. Long-term is fantastic because you are in a lease. Me, I like a 30-day because if we don't get along, I want to say sayonara and get you out. But you're guaranteed a long-term, so you know that they're going to be there. So it just depends on the risk.
What is the occupancy rate that you're seeing for your Airbnb in Nashville?
We're solid booked. Every weekend is booked.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, Nashville, is a weekend spot.
Oh, yeah.
So my Thursday to Sundays, I don't have an open day.
Do you see like a lull? Have you had it for a year yet?
2 years.
2 years? Okay. So do you see a lull like around the holidays when it's not as warm and
winter,
stuff? Yeah. That's what I figured.
Yeah. I would say a good rule of thumb, occupancy rate is about 80 to 85% in all of Nashville with your Airbnbs.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
And if you get one in like Florida or near the beach, it's all year round.
Probably. Yeah, my aunt's got one down in Destin, and she's got a pretty solid calendar.
Yeah.
Because even in the winter, it's beautiful at the beach.
It's beautiful.
So it's just pretty.
Yeah,
I mean,
Reed's stepdad has one in Gulf Shores, and I know his is pretty much always booked.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good
It's
spot.
a good idea, but not in a city that has limits to it and everything like that.
Right.
So
yeah, which is most.
So, do you have any books or anything like that that you have read that have helped you personally?
I mentioned it earlier, but my number one mentor is Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah.
That's just something that John and I have. We just kind of followed his suit, and it did well for us. And I feel like the way he lays it out, using other people's money, and don't be afraid of debt. It's such almost like an oxymoron to take on more debt. But if you know what you're taking on and you're doing it for the right reason, yeah, go borrow. Like that's fine.
Yeah.
Don't borrow to go buy yourself a sports car.
As long as it makes sense.
Correct. Go borrow to buy an asset that's going to pay for the sports car.
Yeah.
Right?
That's it. He literally says that exactly in the
All
book.
the time.
If you want to buy a brand new Lambo, because we've talked, he's a Lambo guy.
Absolutely.
If you want to buy a brand new Lambo, you don't buy the Lambo. You take the money that you would spend on the Lambo, go buy another house that's going to make you money for years and years and pay for that. Makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. It's the opposite from, a lot of people are Dave Ramsey fans, and that's totally fine. It's completely different. His is live debt free.
Debt free, yeah.
And Kiyosaki's is live full of debt.
Full of debt.
So I go with that side because that's the level I want to be at.
For sure.
So.
And Ryan said too, when he was on, you have to prove to the government that you can handle debt to get more debt. So, I mean, even my parents, like growing up, taught me, well, you have to get a credit card, but you have to use it responsibly. You can't just go get a credit card and be like, oh, yeah, I have money. No, you don't have money. You're borrowing that.
That's what I remember, like, on college, and I know you probably experienced it, like, when they had the credit card stands, open a credit card when you're in college. I remember my parents being like, don't you even talk to those people.
Yeah.
Like, do not get a credit card. But then it's like, okay, but then you have no credit when you're done.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you do that responsibly? And I definitely think you need to.
Oh, for sure.
Maybe if you give your kid like a $500 limit, that'd probably be a good idea. Here's $500 a month that's on a credit card. Use it for gas or, school supplies, whatever you need. Very small. You got to pay it off at the end of the month. That would be a great way to slowly create credit.
For sure. Because when you're in college and other things, like you get very much caught up in going to the bars, going out to eat, going to do things, just whatever, without looking at what you're spending. So it can be really hard, especially for somebody that doesn't necessarily have a job and they're just relying on their parents or have always relied on their parents. So I'm not saying that's everybody, but it is a big thing.
Funny side note, and he'll probably kill me for saying this story, but a great friend of mine that I met here got a credit card in college and thought he was going to just live life. He was buying shots for the bar. He raked that thing up thousands and thousands of dollars, thinking that dad was going to pay that credit card bill. Well, dad said, no, now you can drop out of college, go get yourself a job, pay the credit card bill off, and pay yourself to get through the rest of your college.
Yeah.
And financially, he came from a nice family that completely could have paid that bill. His mind frame was, dad's going to pick up the pieces. Well, he will tell you today, it was the shittiest, best lesson that he's ever had because he had to do it himself. And he did. He paid it off and went back to, I think he ended up going to Pepperdine at that time.
Yeah.
And then, he'd been to a lot of beautiful colleges, but he had to do it. And it was like,
you have to.
It's not free money.
It's not free money. And you have to use it responsibly. And my dad always taught me, like, when you get out of college, you need to have good credit. Because that's a big problem. People get out of college and they're like, oh my gosh, I graduated. Let me go buy a new car.
Yeah.
Don't buy a new car as soon as you get out of school. Like, hold on to the 2,000 little crap that you have and just wait it out until you're out of debt 100%, making money and can handle that.
Well, you are very responsible for a 22-year-old little college graduate.
Am I? People say that, but I don't feel it. I don't know.
22, if you ask me, I'd be like, I want that. No,
Yeah.
just kidding.
Okay, that was one other thing before we go that I wanted to ask you. You started when you were 30, right?
That's when we started picking up our first rental, yeah.
Okay, how do you think that it would have affected you differently if you would have started at 20 instead of 30?
Probably, well, that's different. I don't know. At 20, I didn't have the means. I didn't have the experience. I don't think my dad would have been as open to giving me the money, not already have known what real estate looked like. You do a lot of growing, I think, in that, in that getting out of college to starting a family stage.
Decade.
Yeah. And so for my dad, it was always like, you need to prove yourself. If you want me to help you, that's fine. But you got to bring something to the table.
Right.
And I'd already been selling real estate actively and successfully for the last 5 years prior. I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
I knew what a good deal looked like, and I knew how to negotiate it. And I don't think that he would have loaned me that money at 20. I'm almost 100% positive he wouldn't have loaned me that money.
Right.
And I wasn't even in that mind frame of knowing how to even ask at that point. It's too young.
For sure.
Too young.
All right, last thing. What would be the number one piece of advice for somebody that is wanting to start investing in real estate? Don't say just do it. Don't say just do it. I could see it on your face if that's what was about to come out. Don't say that.
Okay. The number one best advice for someone wanting to start investing: educate yourself. I think you need to know what you're doing. Like I mentioned earlier, yes, anybody can do it, and I strongly believe that anybody can do it. And I think everybody should increase their portfolio with investment properties. Hands down, that's my motto. But that being said, if you don't know what you're doing, you could lose a lot of money.
Yeah.
And trust me, we've all fallen, and I think that's part of the learning, and that's okay. Get back up and learn from it. But if you don't know what you're doing, it could get a little scary out there.
For sure.
So I'd hate to see a brand new investor that's watching this go lending home, hey, give me $200,000, buy a property that's making half your mortgage payment and you're already in the hole.
Yeah.
Like that would be a really shitty situation. So educate yourself on the rental market, educate yourself on the real estate market, and then make a nice educated commitment to what you want to do.
Right.
And I think that would be your first and most important step.
Well, thanks so much for sharing all of your knowledge and experience. It really is great. And I probably sounded so dumb, but I just like to take everything in that you say because I learned a lot from you. And it's much appreciated for you to sit here and talk about all of that.
Absolutely. There's a lot more I can share with you, girl. So anything you need.
And we will definitely be doing an entire episode on all the craziness that Kara has seen, because I know that was the best part of this episode.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. It was not the best part, but it was the most hilarious part.
Yeah.
Even though
There's
you kind of had some
stories.
hardships. But thanks everybody for listening. Come back next week for another episode, and I appreciate you for sitting down with me.
Anytime, baby. See
Bye.
you next time.